So I'm eager to learn about this project as a means of putting the trades, technology, and innovation back in the heart of public education. Mike holds a BA in history from Bowdoin College. He received a JD from the University of Washington School of Law, where he studied education law and policy. And he also holds a master's degree in education leadership from the University of Maine. He began his career as an Island Institute Fellow on Vinyl Haven in 2000, working with middle school students, and became the school leader at Vinyl Haven School in 2005. There, he helped develop a shared leadership governance structure and place-based education learning opportunities. 9 years ago, Mike became superintendent of the St. George Municipal School Unit. He focuses on developing community and business partnerships to enhance teaching and learning, expanding access to career and technical education to all students, and finding collaborative, integrated ways to meet the needs of students and families. He received the Maine Department of Education Commissioner's Award and serves on the Island Institute Board of Directors and the Maine Community Foundation's Knox County Grant-Making Committee. You're a busy guy, Mike. He lives in St. George with his wife, Keely, and their 2 children. So come on up, Mike. We want to hear from you.
Tend to move around, so we'll take this off. Well, thank you very much for the introduction, Joan. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk with you all. So I'm going to, as Joan said, I'm going to talk about the St. George CTE Makerspace project, which is a partnership with Midcoast School of Technology to develop a the nation's first pre-K-12 CTE program and construct a CTE Makerspace building next to St. George School. And I'll go into sort of the details of what that means. But one thing, I was looking at the mission for the Rotary Club, and something that jumped out at me was this quote here about providing service to others, promoting integrity, and advancing world understanding, goodwill, and peace through our fellowship of business professionals and community leaders, And that jumped out at me because this project in our school was really is founded upon collaboration, cooperation across sectors. So it's with our business community, our families, our different community members, different nonprofits, civic organizations. And what we found is the only way we can meet the needs of our students and seize the opportunities that are out there is to do it as a larger community with everybody involved, because the challenges and the opportunities are larger than what schools can handle and take advantage of. And we'll talk more about that. Help me out, Sandy.
You just have to touch the screen right now.
Ooh, magic. Perfect. Thank you. So I always like to start with who we are, because that should always be at the core of what we're doing. So St. George's is a community school district, and the heart and strength of our district is the town of St. George. Our mission is to do whatever it takes to ensure that every single student thrives and contribute to the resiliency and vitality of our town. And that connection between school and community, that's our heart, that's our strength, that's our magic. So as a school district, we operate St. George School, which is a pre-K to 8th grade school of about 210 students. Our high school students enjoy high school choice. 55 of them go to Camden Hills Regional High School, along with my daughter. My son, of course, chose to go to Lincoln Academy because that's as far away from Camden as you can get. Always goes that way. And about 20% of our high school students attend Midcoast School of Technology. So as many of you know, St. George is a small rural community on a peninsula, about 40 minutes south of here. It's a traditional fishing community composed of a variety of villages, including Tennant's Harbor and Port Clyde. There's always been a lot of strong support for the school, for education, and for being innovative and creative. In 2015, we broke away from a larger school district to create our own municipal district, and that was because the town wanted more control over the education of their children. So the crisis. So what is causing us to reimagine and rethink public education and workforce development? So there's a variety of factors. One sort of startling piece is in our county, 1 out of every 10 babies born is drug affected. In terms of labor shortages, obviously around here, we've seen the help wanted sides. We've heard the stories of shortages in the trades and the technical fields. You've heard about Maine's aging workforce, and it also plays out at a national scale, and we'll get more into this. But just one example, by 2030, they're predicting a shortage of 2 million skilled workers in manufacturing. even before the pandemic, our students were struggling to engage in learning, and more were coming to us with severe behavioral, mental health, and social emotional needs. So what that resulted in ultimately to sort of what that looks like for us is 24% of our students in pre-K through 8 are in special education. Of that 24%, half of them are in our most intensive programs, which provide our small class sizes, 4 to 5 students, intensive behavioral and academic support, social work services, behavior health professionals, and for some students, one-on-one support throughout the school day. Part of the reason, it's only part of it, so I don't want, this doesn't apply to every student in special education. I want to be really clear on that. But part of the reason we're seeing growing needs of students is because a lot of our students have experienced some degree of trauma. In Mid-Coast, Maine, 1 out of every 4 students has experienced 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And I'll talk more about that, but remember that number, 4 or more. So adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, there's been a lot of research about it over the past decade and talking about what this means in terms of impact on children and adults. But it includes abuse, neglect, household dysfunction, which could be a household member drinking or using drugs, having a relative who's been incarcerated. And if you have 3 or more ACEs, you are 2.5 times more likely to fail a grade. You're going to more likely have language difficulties, be suspended or expelled, referred to special education, and score lower on standardized test scores. It also results in shorter lifespan, and more likely to get some chronic diseases. So that's 3 or more ACEs. In our county, 1 out of every 4 kids has 4 ACEs or more. Now, there are positive things you can do to counteract the impact of ACEs, but if you don't, those are some of the outcomes that we're facing. And that's part of the reason so many schools are struggling, both in terms of personnel, programming, and budget, to get the staff and the programs to meet the needs of students. It's honestly the biggest challenge we face at our school, and I think at every school right now. So shifting to workforce shortages, just some numbers up there to show you the types of shortages we're facing as a nation across the board. But also the flip side of this, these are opportunities. If we prepare our kids with the right skills, they could get paid very well to do this work. And that's, from manufacturing, cybersecurity, construction, welders, physicians, auto techs, you name it. So what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do to address this crisis and change? And so basically, part of our big answer to this, not the only one, but a big part of this answer is, so our district is partnering with Mid-Coast School of Technology to develop the nation's first pre-K through 12 career and technical education program and construct a CTE makerspace building next to St. George School. And that building will have a shop for boat building, woodworking, and metalwork, and a makerspace with 3D printers, laser cutters, CNC routers, robotics, and sewing machines. And we're very intentional about bringing traditional trades and skills alongside the newer technologies and digital pieces, because we think that's where the magic and innovation is going to happen. Think about the fact that they can 3D print the hulls for boats now. They started to 3D print pieces for houses, or there's a 3D print house up in Maine. I was talking to a cabinet maker in St. George, and he uses a CNC router to do the intricate designs on the cabinetry that he makes. So we think bringing those two together is really essential. And our community demanded it. They said, we don't want kids just on a computer. We want our kids working with their hands as well. So what is CTE? At the high school level, it's partnerships with businesses and industries. It's pathways to both certifications and degrees. And it's preparing kids for career in college. And Mid-Coast has a ton of more than 17 programs, from automotive to nursing to carpentry to advanced manufacturing. So what does it look like at the pre-K through 8 level? For us, we really define it as hands-on, minds-on learning, technical learning that's connected to career and community. That's how we sort of implement it at our level at St. George School. So here's some visuals sort of showing what that looks like. So over there on the upper left, you see that's a first grader, and she's got a real hammer and nails. And we had a donor who gave us belts for all the first graders and some of the kindergarten students. And it's a real hammer. It's miniature, so they can use it. But we had a local contractor come in, and that person spent the day 2 days working with the students to assemble and hammer together their own their own toolboxes. We also did it with birdhouses. The first grade did it with birdhouses in the spring. And on the birdhouses, the kids also drew pictures of birds that they were studying, and those were laser engraved onto the birdhouse. So they got to see both the hammer and nails all the way to the laser engraving. And it also brought in a local contractor, so they start to see, here's someone in my community who uses these skills to make a living. And right before Thanksgiving, the first grade and our K1 class were working with that same contractor, and they were measuring and cutting 2x4s. So we've got first graders who had a saw, and they were cutting it. Lots of help, lots of volunteers, but they were able to do it. And I'll tell you, like in those moments, we don't have behavior problems. They are completely engaged. So we've got students that have 3D printed and built rockets. Actually, that's my son right there. And we do Lego robotics with the programming and the design. We have a group of middle level students that go to the apprentice shop every week. We've done that for several years now. We'll learn boatmanship or boat building skills. And this is a picture of kindergarten and the K1 and the first grade class again. This fall, they visited an auto body shop, a chef at a restaurant, and a landscaping company, all located in St. George, all run by all run by St. George School alumni. So again, it's part of them understanding, like, here are all these different occupations that I could go into, and this connects them directly to their community, and it gets the community fired up because they're sharing what they know with these young kids. So we really look at this as 21st century shop class. This is a picture of a rendering of the new building. Construction starts in March. It's going to have, as I said, it's got a classroom space here, work area with tables, a bigger shop area with the heavier equipment, and then a maker space on the lower level. You wouldn't think it would cost that much. You would be surprised. So we had a group of teachers from pre-K to middle level, special education teachers, our STEAM educator. They worked last year to develop a pre-K through 8 scope and sequence. And what they really focused on was, what are we already doing that fits into this, and trying to connect it with a career component. Because ultimately our goal is, every year you're at St. George School, you will visit a local tradesperson, business, in our town, outside of our town. I don't care whether it's Blue Shift Rocket down in Brunswick, Bath Iron Works, the local plumber, a software engineer. So by the time you get out of our school and you go to high school, you'll have an amazing sense of the opportunities that are out there. This has really captured the imagination of people in our area, across the state, and even now sort of across the country. So we've had a variety of media come and visit and do stories at the school. Governor Mills came in the spring. This ties into the state's push for, I think, apprenticeships and the trades. So why are we doing this? Why are we going to this effort to rethink and reimagine, and why do we think that CTE Makerspace project is the answer? Well, part is because public education equals workforce development, and I think many of our policymakers have forgotten that. Early on in this project, I was talking to a federal agency about funding this, and we worked with them for months. So what I was ultimately told is that if even one student used the building, they wouldn't fund it. And I showed them that, like, based on, like, we want to open in the evenings for adult education courses, workforce training programs, open community shop times, so 60% of the time it would be used by adults in the community. They said, if a student uses the building, we won't fund it because we don't fund public education. And I'm thinking, if you do economic development and you don't fund public education, that's part of the reason where we're at in this country. And I think that where we sort of went off the tracks in public education and our understanding of it, like, you're seeing more and more articles in the media, whether it's the Axios, Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, really recognizing this disconnect between public education, career preparation, and that it's now playing out and impacting our economy and our day-to-day lives. Whether you want to build a house, get your car fixed, have something done on your computer, it's holding us back. So going to some specific reasons, the core reason we're doing this is what our community, our students, families, and communities said that they wanted. They were really clear with us. And I'll go more into that in a second. We really believe it's the future of public education. We believe this is what you have to do to re-engage students in your learning. Kids learn differently now for a variety of reasons, technology being a huge one. And if you try to do it how we always do it, you're going to lose them. And you need students to develop the necessary skills to meet the existing labor force needs and create the businesses and industries of the future. And it's part of schools diversifying our programming, our partners, and our approach to education. And ultimately, it goes to building rural economic diversity and resilience. And For us as St. George, this is sort of an existential problem because our year-round community is very dependent on the lobster fishery. Whether because of regulations, warming waters, whatever, if that fishery changes, and it is predicted to change, we could lose our year-round community because everyone's biggest asset is their home. If you sell your home in St. George, odds are that ever becomes a year-round home again is not very high. So we can't wait till there's a problem in the fishery to deal with this. We need to start doing that now. So if there is a down year, fishermen or other people in our community, they can, supplement their income doing other pieces. And if they have to transition out, they have the skills to do it and still be able to pay their mortgage and have a good living. So talking about the community, from 1936 to 2006, the Grace Institute was a nonprofit in St. George, and it provided essentially shop and culinary arts classes to St. George students. It closed in 2006 around the sort of the consolidation era. But when I first started at the school, I met with my first year of the district, I met with staff, families, community members, business owners, and we talked about, okay, what's our priorities for our district in terms of facilities and programming? And we had a long list. We had get a pool, create a rec center, 2 basketball courts, science labs, like all sorts of things, great things. In the end, every person in that room agreed the number one priority was to bring shop back. And they talked about the Grace Institute because many of the parents and the people sitting around the table were from St. George. They went to the Grace Institute. That was one of the best memories of high school. They wanted their kids to have that same experience. So, this is we really say our future is rooted in our past. We think about the fishermen and farmers, boat builders and mechanics, carpenters and cooks, artists and engineers who use their hands and minds, not just to make a living, but to make a good life for their families and our community. And that goes all the way back to the beginning. You see on the right there, a picture of Port Clyde, a boatyard in Port Clyde in 1860. On the left, there's a picture of a 3D printer in 2019 in our 4th grade classroom. The tools have changed, but the importance of building and creating, that's always going to be there. So, in terms of re-engaging students, so career and technical education, the research shows that it increases student engagement, graduation rates, post-secondary outcomes, and earnings after high school. Like, we want students doing work that matters to them, to their families, and their community. And when kids work and build and create with their hands and their mind, it just lights up a different part of the brain and they re-engage. And you can see the quote there from our 4th grade teacher, when they work with their hands, they light up. Is a different way to engage. And it sort of counteracts, I'll say the TikTok brain, where you look at something for 5 seconds, swipe, look at something. If for some reason, this activates a different part of the brain and they can re-engage. We've got to do different programming. Schools traditionally have really focused on quantitative and verbal reasoning and ability, and we've ignored spatial. So that's been to the detriment of engineers, construction workers, physicists, mechanics. We've lost a lot of those kids along the way. And the story we often tell to sort of illustrate this, and this is why you can't wait till 11th grade. This is why we think you got to start from day one. So during 5-6 years ago, something like that, several years ago, I got a call from a mother. She said, Mike, I can't get my kid out of bed. He just will not go to school. So we talked, and, he was a really good teacher, small class. We've got a pretty innovative curriculum. So, we couldn't figure it out. And she said, Mike, the only thing he wants to do is he gets home from school and he works on the engine for his 4-wheel or his snowmobile, his lawnmower. That's what he wants to do. So we hooked him up with our makerspace director, and he started spending some time in the makerspace with Paul Meinersman. And the first thing he did was he 3D printed the parts for a V8 engine and assembled it. The next thing Paul said, okay, you can do whatever you want. What do you want to do? And this is a guy who usually walks around like this, pretty serious. You don't see him smile that much. And he said, I want to build an automatic cat feeder. Now, that is not what we anticipated. We're like, all right, you want to do that? Because he really likes his cats. And let's see if I can go back to it real quick to show you what the prototype for it. So this was the prototype for the automatic cat feeder. So he 3D printed it, he assembled it, he programmed the Arduino, so when the cat put its paw in a certain place, the door would open. Now, he never gave it to the cat. He put Skittles in it and feeds himself. That guy. But his mom talked to me at the end of the year. She said, Mike, I was talking to his older brother and saying, what do you want to do when you grow up? He said, I want to go to Midco School of Technology and study diesel mechanics. And she talked to her younger son, who we had been working with. And she said, what do you want to do? And he paused and he said, I want to be an engineer. Now, that's what we're talking. If we hadn't done what we had done, just try to keep pushing him into the regular classroom, by the end of the year, even if he was still coming to school, he would have hated it. He would have thought that he wasn't smart. And instead, by the end of the year, the kid wants to go to become an engineer. That's the kind of change we're looking for. And those are the type of kids we used to lose and still are losing. You know, in terms of partners, I sort of hit on this. We cannot do this alone. The problem is too big. I'd say to our staff, to our community, if the school tries to do it alone, we will fail. I guarantee it. Like, we need our business partners. We need civic organizations like the Rotary, the Oddfellows and the Masons in our town. The churches have been a big part of the work that we're doing. The Business Alliance. We need to work with town government and other institutions like Midcoast School of Technology, higher ed, community college system. We need everybody working together to change this. And we've got to innovate. We've got to come up with new ideas that break us out of the old boxes where we funneled, you know, our thoughts and our kids. So we have been fundraising now for 2.5 years. This has become a big part of my life. We've raised at this point about $2.8 million. 55% of that from private donations. We've had kids selling eggs on the side of the road and donating the money. And we've had people write checks for $100,000 or more. We've got 32 business sponsors that have contributed $60,000. And there's been tremendous support in the community. We had to do another referendum because it's going to cost more than we thought. And it passed 161 to 1. So it's pretty good. We'll worry about that one, but that's okay. I mean, it was like, you don't have to try. We're going to raise the money for it. So, you know, you can see it's come from a variety of places, but, you know, it's been a lot of work and it's been a real community effort. But I will say it's given us time to really refine our message, refine the vision, and get really good at talking to people and build a community of support. You know, and, you know, part of how we look at this community, even when this project is done, this will be a part of our school community now, this group of donors and supporters, and we'll keep working with them into the future. So ultimately, what we want to do is provide a model for a pre-K through 12 CT program that re-engages students in learning, creates a more diversified and skilled workforce, and leads to more sustainable and resilient communities. So that's what we're aiming at. And we recently received the YAS Prize. It's a national award. There were over 2,000 applicants, representing 27 million students, all 50 states, every sector. So there were private schools, charter schools, religious schools, homeschool networks, consortium of educators, education technology companies, every form of education you can imagine. And we were one of 3 traditional public schools that made it to the quarterfinalists of 64. And we were the only traditional public school chosen as one of the 9 finalists. So this has been an amazing experience. I'm actually flying to Alabama tomorrow because the winner was a school in Montgomery, Alabama, Valiant Cross Academy, that works with Black boys from Montgomery, founded by these 2 brothers who are just amazing human beings. So it's allowed me to get to meet other people from across the country, all different sectors that are really doing this work. And you know, sometimes the work feels overwhelming, but when you see other people who are doing it, it gives you a lot of hope. And these are people who it's like, there's no if, it's like, you got to get it done. And yeah, and so, we are constantly looking to grow and expand and pull more people in. If you know businesses that you think would be interested, please, send them our way. They're sponsors. They also help guide us in some of our development. We also try to connect our kids with them. Here are some of our bigger sponsors, Harbor Builders, Chip Bauer, who runs that. He's on our building committee. Chris Levitt from Levitt Property Services. Steve Ladd from Steel Pro has been really amazing working with us through this whole project. So, oh yeah, Paul did a presentation with me yesterday, so he's up there. But yeah, this is, that's sort of the overview of the project. And I don't know, I'm happy to take any questions if that's how you all do it. Thank you.
Are there other school districts looking at what you're doing in the state and nationally?
Yeah, so we presented at an Education Maine Workforce Symposium in Portland, I think between Thanksgiving and winter break. And we had schools like Eastport was coming up to us, talking about like how I think their assistant superintendent, how they could do it. So yeah, people are certainly interested in it. And when I presented this, so for the YAS Prize, you're one of 64 finalists. You apply for it. They interview you, then they choose their semifinalists. Then for the semifinalists, they flew all 33 of us to Miami. You're there for 4 days, getting intensive training on how to do a pitch and talk about your project. And on the last day, you've got 3 minutes, and you get up in front of a panel of judges in the whole room, and you pitch your idea. And at 3 minutes, you are done. They will cut you off. They won't let you say another word. So I got to know the other semifinalists really well. They got to know me, and people were really, I mean, I had a woman, one of the other finalists who runs a homeschool network. She's like, I really want to get my kids in my homeschool to doing this kind of hands-on work. We were talking about connecting to the local contractor or plumber. So yeah, people are excited. It's just starting to show them that you can do it. And ultimately, our goal is no less than to transform public education. Immediate goal is, I mean, we're doing this because we got to do it for our kids. That's it. I mean, and again, it's not like a fun thing. We feel like if we don't do this, we'll fail. But big picture, we think education's got to change, and we hope this will help spur that.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Very informative. The I guess I feel very strongly about what you said about the importance of people being encouraged to use their hands and their head.
Yeah.
And I think that's been very lacking.
Mm.
Part of that, I think, is that there's concept, particularly among certain schools, that you don't want to get your hands dirty, and that somehow working as a mechanic or a plumber or electrician is a kind of a dirty thing to do and is lower status. What, if anything, can one do to fix that?
I mean, I think it's starting. I think the nation is waking up to that mistake. And I would say one of the things that you can do is, if you have a teacher that wants to do this with their kids, support them, because they'll also get pushback from some parents or other people who might say, well, no, I want my kid more seat time. They need, and I'm not saying, like, we're not trying to compromise any of our skills that the kids are learning and their ability. We're saying that we're going to integrate this in. So there's not a separate track. This is just part of how kids learn. But I would say, support people who are going down this road. And I think the country there are a few things that are converging now that I think why make this project timely. One is the price of college, right? Like, I got 2 kids in high school. If I look at the price of college, and it's insane. And I heard someone say the other day, he said, the fact that you have to do massive college bailouts or loan forgiveness shows that return on investment isn't there. So I think people are thinking about that. People also see, like the tradespeople in our community, they're making pretty good money. I was talking to a local company, and he was saying some of his welders are making more than his engineers. Now, we need to make sure that how we talk about it, like, just as a nation, this is a national shift. We have to respect every pathway. Like I tell the kids, I don't care if you go to Midco School of Technology, you get your certification, you want to go weld right after, God bless you. If you want to go and get another certification and start your own company, God bless you. If you want to go be an engineer at MIT, every one of those paths are valid, and none is better than the other. When I was in school, it was made very clear to me, one path is better than the other. So that narrative as a country has to change.
Yeah, Mike, great presentation. I've always been a fan of maker fairs and maker spaces. I think they're great. You mentioned a figure, I think it was 2030, there'll be 2 million job losses. Have you taken into consideration that another imposing factor is the introduction of artificial intelligence into our economic workforce? And do you think that's going to impact the way this develops?
Yeah. So this job, so they're expecting a 2 million jobs, like they'll be short 2 million jobs by 2030. They won't have enough workers. Yeah, I think AI is absolutely going to have an effect. I think the interesting part is I think AI is going to hit white collar professions first. And I think you'll be safer in some of the trades initially. Like how that, like manufacturing, I think that's a harder question because of robotics. But interesting story about that. So yeah, so basically I don't know. And I don't think anybody knows. But I think when I see the jobs most likely to be replaced, it could be like, some like legal advice, accounting, programming, like those areas. I haven't seen welder, electrician, plumber, or even necessarily engineer. So yeah, an interesting piece on this. So we took our 7th graders to visit Fisher Engineering, and the 2 guys who program all the robots at Fisher were talking to the class, and robots do 80% of the welds at Fisher. And these 2 guys program the robots for the whole plant. Neither of them went to college. One got his GED, one graduated. I think one learned welding sort of from his grandfather. One worked in the woods for a while. They went to Fisher. They got lessons on like how to weld to a certain level. then they eventually want to learn robotics. So Fisher offers classes. So they learned like programming and robotics from Fisher. They now do that. So they didn't need to go to get a special master's or PhD. They're doing it right out of high school. And I think that even hit me, like my assumptions were wrong around that. So yeah, I think AI, the disruptive force it's going to have on our society, I think we're just beginning to grapple.
It seems to me you have the facility, you have staffing, you have curriculum, and then you have students willing to take it. Which of those four that I can think of are the most complicated part of all of this?
That's a good question. I think so. For us, the key was, I'll start with like what allowed us to do this. Our community was like, we want this, so that drove us. I think one of the challenging parts is teachers have so much going on in the day anyways, that this can be a shift in how you do it. So you've really got to work with your staff and have some champions on your staff that this is what they want to do. And that's helped drive and inspire our staff to keep going in this direction. For us, we've had to invest a tremendous amount of time in the fundraising and around the building, because we've had to raise, $3.2 million or more. And the natural complexity with that. But, you strip a lot of it away and it's not that hard. Like, our first grade class, the teacher had done a tools unit for, who knows how long, tools of work. And then she started to have a contractor come in. And then when we started getting excited about CTE, she like scaled that up. So we had a donor who got them the belt so they could all have their own hammer, where before they had like maybe one hammer. So you can actually start sort of small and just start building up. I think you got to have that commitment among your leadership within the school and the community outside of the school that we want to get this done. And, like I was talking to a woman from the homeschool, she's a collaborative collective of different mothers who essentially homeschool groups of kids. She could do this. Like, she could talk to her students. They could have a plumber come in and talk, or a computer program come in and do something with the kids. So, I think, the most complex part and the most beautiful part is bringing so many different people together. I'm talking from, I don't care what political background you are, what your profession is, college, not whether you went to college or not, and being able to like get us to sort of all speak the same language. And this is something that sort of brings people together. And the beauty of this project, I think that is the most beautiful thing about this project, is it's a big thing we're doing in public education, and it actually brings people together. It doesn't divide. So that can be complicated, but it's also the best part.
I spent 4 years helping the Searsport-based Maine Ocean School develop and function. And it died on the death of the legislators who were former teachers who wanted to make sure that education didn't escape from their control, basically, or the control of the unions. What's the reaction in Augusta to what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's been supportive. And, the staff has been supportive. It is change. And, I think education is notoriously slow to change. And I think the blame for that is spread among, a variety of groups, including school leaders like me. But, there's a great line from a Springsteen song that says, "I can't tell my courage from my desperation." And I keep telling people that's where we're at right now. So yeah, I don't have a lot of patience for the obstructionism. I mean, the Maine Ocean School, I don't know all the, the facts around that case or that situation. But I would say like I got no problem pushing systems to make change. And, the great part is we've got community and teachers who are like, we want this too. And I don't care what we have to upset or break along the way to get there, because it's got to get done. And that's one of the great things. When I was with the Yas Prize, I was surrounded by a bunch of other people who were like, we don't care what it takes, we don't care what shape or form the school is, we're going to meet our community needs. And to me, ultimately, that's what it's about. We serve our communities. That's our job.
Do we have anything online, Dan? No.
I have a question.
What can the state of Maine do to encourage and support not only your project, but other projects within the state?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's making it a priority and being clear that, you know, we ask the state, like, share our story so other people know that it can be done. And I think, you know, I think that's one of the first steps, and then empower as much as you can the people who are trying to do this. And, you know, I think this is going to look different in every community. Like we didn't have any space in our school, so we had to do a building. Other schools may have space and they won't have to. You know, we hope, like, from our story, the scope and sequence, that we'll be able to share that with the state of Maine and they can share it with other groups. But, you know, encourage those individuals that are thinking outside the box to keep going. And, you know, and I would say that, you know, we've certainly had support. The Reinventing Rural Education Ventures, REV, one of our first grants came from them through the state to us, and that was to fund innovative education. So the REV program has been really supportive and helpful of us. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of raise up this work and let people know that it can be done. All right, great. Thank you very much.
You know, I think this is